Good morning, Craftastics. So I am the guest stamper for July 2021, and one of our requirements this year was to do a demo during one of our meetings or whatever. So I thought, because I'm a little extra sometimes, that I would record and share each technique that I'm going to do for the month of July using the Daisy Garden stamp set. And Daisy Garden can be found on page 106 in our annual catalog. And let's see, I'll share that briefly here. Okay, page 106. It is one of those large background stamps. So I'm going to go ahead and move my camera down. Today we're going to use the Daisy Garden stamp set, Memento ink, and we're going to use our colored pencils and a blending brush or a water brush, water painter as the case may be. So let's go ahead and move that over. Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna take my name off of here so that you can see a little bit better. So I'm going to share how to create this little note card, and then I'll show you a few that I have done in preparation for sharing on Friday. Okay, so grab the wrong ink right away. So we're going to use Memento ink Tuxedo Black. I do have the large block on here. This is block F for this stamp set. Okay, move that in the light a little bit. Let's see. So when you're using one of these large stamps, you want to get ink all over your shirt on video, and then you're going to go ahead and use this in this upside down motion. Instead of using the stamp putting it on the pad, we're using the pad putting it on the stamp itself. I'm only inking the top portion of this because we're doing a note card, and I will not need all of the design inked up. All right, so I'm moving that out of the way. I'm going to turn this over. You could also use your Stamparatus to stamp on here. I decided to use the block just so that I could position it on different sized card bases. So I'm going to push this right down, and I like to just kind of make sure that I've gotten all the area of the background stamped on there, and then I'll just lift that up. And as you can see, that should be nice and ready to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give this just 1 second to dry. You could use your heat tool on setting number 1 and just let it solidify in there. The reason we use Memento ink is because it is water fast, so it's not going to bleed when we add the water for the watercolor pencils. So it's quick drying and water resistant. Just move that out of the way. And basically we're going to color now with our pencils. I really enjoyed using both sets of pencils. I used set 1 and 2. I really liked the Early Espresso for the centers. I gave it a Black-Eyed Susan type of look, but I really like the Crushed Curry Yellow, or gold almost. So that worked really well in my other ones. And then I also used a little bit of pink and a little bit of red for the centers. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna color. Let's see, and I definitely needed Old Olive and this bright green for some texture in our coloring here. So let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. There we go. All right, so I'm starting in the middle. I am just lightly coloring my Early Espresso. And remember that it does not have to be perfect. It is going to have a watercolor look. I did use just some basic white cardstock. These actually came from the note cards pack that we have that come with the envelopes. So this was one of those no-brainers, run with it. Okay, so let's see. So I started with my flower color. I really wanted that crushed curry, that bright, bright yellow. So I did color all of the flowers yellow to start with, and then I'm going to add in some of those detail colors towards the center after and on top of the yellow. So I'm just going to color these for a moment. This is the most exciting part of watching a video, is when somebody has to color all these flowers, right? One day, maybe I'll be able to edit out some of the less exciting parts of creating stamping videos, right? I did not do the power of TV to swap this out, or the power of video, so I'm just going to keep coloring. And hopefully, when you watch this, you will be inspired to grab some Memento ink and your colored pencils, your watercolor pencils, and get some excitement going on your cards. It's actually a lot of fun if you enjoy coloring. If you are not a coloring person at all, this will not be your best friend. Now I could have stamped these flowers, these images, in a different color ink and then just colored with the pencils or the markers, but I wanted to be able to add the water painters to kind of give the watercolor effect, that softness that happens when you add the water to these pencils. Is really kind of cool. So that is this method here. And the other thing you have to remember, when you use one of the regular inks, they are water-based, so they will run when you use them, depending on the situation that you have. You may like that or not like that. So that is why I used the Memento for this one. Ooh, getting close with the flowers. So remember, this is just our first layer of color. This is the overall flower color, and it actually looks so much brighter once we add water to it. So I can't wait to get to that point so I can show you how exciting that actually looks. All right, so there's all the flowers colored. Let's pull that down just a little bit. There you go. And here's where I'm gonna add a little bit of those extra details. So I'm starting in the middle, and I'm gonna use pink, and I'll just pick like 3 of the flowers, and I'm just gonna add some pink coming out from the center of this flower. And it's nothing fancy, just coloring in at the bottom there. And let's see, let's do this one. And I am pushing fairly hard on the pencils, but not super hard enough to break all of the tips. Okay, and we'll add a little bit of pink up here. Okay, and then I'm gonna take the red, and I'm gonna add some red to my other flowers that I did not start with. And you can see this red is already much darker in color than that pink is, so it's gonna be a little bit more bold of a contrast. But the technique is the same. I'm just kind of coloring toward the center of my flower. So almost black-eyed Susans, but now they're almost like a little Mexican wildflower. I actually have some growing outside, which is where the color combination came from. So there we have that. So next we're going to add some greens. And what I like to do here, I did some of this light green for the foundational pieces, similar to the way we used the yellow. And then I'm going to go back in and add the old olive for some of the details. And I'm just going to follow the lines of the leaves for those details. And when I use the water painter, it's just going to kind of muddle that up and give it a little bit of dimension and texture without being too fancy. And sometimes when I start watercoloring, I realize that I have left off a piece of something. So if that happens, you just go back and fill it in later. All right, so we have the basic lime green here. This is Granny Apple Green. And now I'm gonna add some of that texture with the old olive. And you can see I'm just kind of following these lines, nothing super fancy, just a little extra color to give some depth. This is how I get to be an artist, because I'm not really an artist. I'm a pretend artist. I should start a show calling myself the Pretend Artist. Okay, so now we're ready to water paint. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can get it a little closer further, so you can see what happens as I water paint. So the tip does get stained, but see, I'm gonna squeeze. You can see there's a drop of water. I'll just make sure there's no color. And I started from light to dark, so I'm gonna start with all the greenery first. So let's move this right here, you can see. And even if there's white space, it just kind of fills that in. Let's see. So I'm doing these leaves first. You can see how those colors kind of blend and muddle together. And I am using one of the fine tip brushes just so that it's not super messy. Come up here and get this little guy. You can see it just kind of adds that color directly to the paper. It kind of like sinks it in there. Trying to remember to move my paper where I have everything focused in. Let's see. So those greens really blend nicely and create a wonderful visual. Add a little bit of extra water to my brush here. And these will take a moment to dry. Again, if you have your heating tool, you can use the dry setting and just kind of make your process go a little bit faster. And there we have, I do believe, all of the green has been done on our card. So let's pinch this back, zoom out just a little bit. There we go. So now we will brush this off and we will start again with the light to dark. So I have these two flowers right here that only have the crushed curry. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring that yellow to life like this. Oh, let's see. Let's pull that in so you can see how it comes to life. Here we go. Can you see? Oh, trying to show you some greatness, and here we go. Here's a wider spot. You can start seeing the difference in those colors once you add that water. So let's pinch that back out. And we'll keep going. All right, so now I started from the outer edges and went in, and sometimes you can start from the inside and go out, and you're just pulling that color from the center of the flower out. We will do the centers of the flower at the very, very end. That is that brown early espresso color. So we want to make sure that is one of the last things that we do. Oh, and now I get quiet. So here's another one of those, basically we're coloring with a water painter now. Come back down here. Let's see if I can bring this light a little closer. All right. You can see how the brush will pick up some of the other color. You can always go back and add some watercolor background. I did not do any backgrounds on mine. I only did the flowers, so they pop a whole lot on the white paper. Again, this is the Pretend Artist. Just adding those color details with the water painter, making sure there's no white space in the flowers themselves. Come up here. This reminds me of when I was a kid and my parents would buy me those watercolor painter books that had all the little colored dots, and you had to use those little water paint, colored watercolor paint brushes. I don't even know what they're called. Those teeny tiny little paint brushes that were super skinny, and you would wet them, and then you would put the color right onto the paper just like this, and those dots would just kind of bleed together and create the color on the paper. That's kind of what this reminds me of with the colored pencils, except that you're doing the dot creating with your colored pencil. All right. So I can tell that I need to do this one right here because it still has a lot of white near the edges, and this one right here I did pieces and not the whole thing. So let's finish this one right here. Make sure we've got these petals completely colored, and then we'll do this one. Oh, well, this is weird. I have not had that happen on any of the other cards. Not sure why that happened, but I did have a little bit of the ink run. When I share the other cards, you'll be able to see that that ink definitely did not run on the others. So maybe the heat tool is preferred to set that Memento ink in place so it doesn't run. I see it's happening in a couple of places where I've used heavier drops of water. So now I just need to go back in and do our brown centers. Takes that color and just makes it work really, really well. So there is our card. I'm going to pull that back just a little bit and let me share some other cards with you. And again, these will all be in our group, so you will be able to see these cards in a little better fashion, one at a time. So this is one note card here. Okay. Then we have this one. You can see a little tiny bit of the black bleeding up there. Okay. Here's the next one. Now I'm like fully examining each card to make sure. So you can see how some of the color will just kind of spread out. Remember, this was not done on watercolor paper. I'm actually going to do some on watercolor paper for one of the other techniques. Here's some playful color with the flowers, some pinks and purples. What did I use here? I used Gorgeous Grape and Rich Razzleberry for some of these. And then I decided I would do a white daisy type. So I left this one with, I actually colored the white flowers, and that was it. Let's see, I'll pinch that back out, my messy surface. Let's see, oh. And there you have it. So that's week 1. With our Daisy Garden stamp set in the new catalog. Again, it's a giant background stamp, and you will be able to see a couple of different techniques over the course of the month of July. I hope the tutorial is an extra added bonus. Even if you have to listen to me, you at least get to see some excitement and some different techniques that you can use in your card making. So, all right, that's it for now. I hope that our Craftastic team is doing well, staying cool in your air conditioner. It's hot here in Louisiana, so y'all have a good day. Bye.